Where do leaders usually get high performance wrong? And why can more effort actually make teams oftentimes worse?
Well, I'll answer the second part first, and that
Okay.
is, why can it more effort lead us down the wrong path? And it's because of how most organizations operate today. The average individual, it spends 18 hours a week in meetings and then loses another 11 hours digging themselves out of messages. That's 3/4 of their week gone before they've done anything at work and before they've achieved a single task. And so the way that we're working right now is a recipe for burnout. And what I try to do in super teams is look at what do the best teams do differently. In other words, what do the best people working within organizations, how do they manage to achieve more, and why is it that they're more satisfied in how they go about doing their jobs? And I found some really interesting insights. But before we get to those, let's talk about how do you even get people to become a team? Because that was the first part of your question. Like, what do most organizations get wrong? Well, most people working in so-called teams are not really a team at all. They're just a collection of people who work in the same group. So how do you turn a group of strangers into an actual team? Well, it turns out there are three fundamental things, and most teams don't have them. The first is a shared goal. You need to have something that you're working towards that your colleagues share in terms of their objectives. So if I am looking for to get out at 5 o'clock and you're trying to get promoted, we have different goals. We do not have a shared goal. Shared goal is the same objective that we're all working toward together. The second thing is we need role clarity. I need to know what I'm responsible for. I need to know what you're responsible for, and I need to understand how they fit together. In a lot of organizations, you don't have that clarity. And so that leads to balls being dropped or it leads to turf wars. The third thing is we need interdependence. And interdependence is just a psychological term. All it means is we need to believe that we need each other in order to be successful in our role. So if we're both salespeople and we both need to hit our quotas, not only do we not have a shared goal because we have our own individual goals, but now we're competitors. So that's the opposite of interdependence.
Right.
Interdependence means we feel like I need you to succeed in order for me to be successful. And so most organizations don't have that shared sense of teamwork. And I think it's a big part of why we see so much dysfunction at work.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of relationships over transactions, and when it comes to teams, it's something that it immediately helps people align. Something I've talked about often is when I was CEO of our company and running the company, we would have Monday morning huddles where we just got together across the company and talked about what everyone did for the weekend. Just by being aligned and understanding what was important to each other, that was really advantageous to everybody wanting to work better together. It's a lot easier to align goals, to your point, and to be upfront, vulnerable, authentic with your team if you actually know, like, and trust them. And so I could say, listen, I'm working towards a promotion. And you could say, listen, I just want to get home to my kids because I'm focused on being a great dad and soccer practice starts at 5:30. And if I get home at 5:15, I'm going to be late every day. And that makes me look like a bad dad. So if we trust each other, we can have that conversation. So I think those three things are pretty valid, and I've seen them validated in my own life and my own businesses.
Absolutely, and it's important to point out that just because someone is seeking a promotion, the other person is trying to get him at 5 o'clock. Neither one of those goals is necessarily wrong. The key is to create an environment where everyone feels like they're pulling in the same direction. So part of that falls to the leader in terms of creating a metric that everyone can push toward, that everyone feels like they need each other in order to succeed. So an example of this is, having a metric around customer service or net promoter is what often they call them,
Right, right.
where the metric that you ask people in a survey is how likely are you to recommend our service or product to a friend or a colleague. And if the unless the answer is a positive number like nine out of 10, you're considered someone who's not a net promoter. And so, in order for a team to achieve a certain net promoter number, everyone has to work together and creating incentives that are shared, meaning everyone needs to achieve the same incentives in order for the team to succeed. That's a key part of developing that shared goal.
It's really interesting because I had a company for 7 years, and I merged with a larger entity, and then we now uh, lead all M&A for the larger entity, and kind of built a new division or department. and we're very results oriented. And so I brought my immediate team over, and we were very results oriented, and we had this enormous impact on the company. And you join a larger company, 10x your size, and the amount of emails, the amount of meetings, the amount of all those things that I would just be like, nope, not gonna. These cannot happen. We cannot do these things. I can't be a part of these things. And it almost looks like at the beginning that you're antisocial, but it's the exact opposite. I had to set priorities that were going to get us off the right track to help us elevate and escalate past where the original expectations were, because when you're building something new, it's really advantageous. And so my COO and I are like this unique dynamic that fast forward 3 years later, we've learned where we need to be apart, where we need to separate, where we need to lead people in the right directions. And it's been a really good learning thing for us, having been the leaders and the ones only making decisions, to joining a larger corporate environment. To that point, it's amazing how our results showed success, mainly because we prioritized not the things you said were taking 18 and 11 hours a week.
You're hitting on something that's really key. Now we're getting to the meat of this, of what do the best teams do differently. And a big part of it is protecting time for focus work during regular work hours. So before I get into how the best teams do that, let me take a step back and explain how we did this research. So over the last few years, my team and I have gone deep on what the best teams do differently. To find out, we polled thousands of workers and we asked them two simple questions about their team. About their teams. Number one, how effective is your team at reaching its goals? And two is, compared to other teams in your industry, how would you rate your team's performance? Then we took the teams with a perfect score, a 10 out of 10 on both of those items, and we looked at what those teams are doing differently. We called them super teams. A very small percentage of teams, about 8% of people belong to a super team. And we looked at everything from how they structure their day to how they run their meetings to even how they recover after work hours. And what we found is they excel for three main reasons. One is they do a much better job of getting things done by better managing their time, energy, and attention. That's the first bucket. The second bucket is they don't just collaborate well, they make each other better. They make their colleagues better at their jobs. And the third is they're not satisfied when things are going well. They're constantly building new skills and improving over time. And every one of those strengths is learnable, which means by building the right habits, any team can dramatically improve its performance. So that first bucket is they get more done by better managing their time, energy, and attention. They do that by setting aside dedicated focus blocks during the day. They'll take, let's say, 90 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon and say, okay, no one's responsible for monitoring their emails. All you have to do is take this 90 minutes and get things done. And that frees up so much bandwidth for people. The only time for people to actually get things done in so many organizations is to come in early, stay late, or work weekends. And that's a recipe for burnout. The other thing that they do that's really interesting is they set aside meeting-free days. They'll carve out a single day during the week and they'll say, okay, no one's allowed to have meetings on these days. And that enables people to get things done without the constant disruptions of being called into meetings. And so both of those are really key. And if I was to take a step back and say, okay, what's everything that high performing teams do to get more done, and put it into a simple formula, it's minimize distractions and maximize focus. And meeting free days and dedicated focus blocks are a key part of that.
You know what's really interesting is I cannot stand meetings without purpose, and I certainly can't stand meetings without action. So if we have the ability to get everybody together and we're not moving the needle and all we're doing is talking about how we could next time move a needle, that is so useless to me. And it's so frustrating because I'm definitely somebody that I want to get it done. I want to maximize time. I want to minimize wasteful energy. I want to have the discipline to be able to get it done in those moments so that I have the discipline to be able to have my time to work out in the morning. And, if you wake up every day and you feel like you're behind, it's very easy to become the team member that nobody wants to have around, and so it's also protecting your own time is allowing you, based on what you're saying, to be more valuable to everybody else in the team. And to the last point you made about minimizing meetings and maybe having the non-meeting days, my team will often have offsites where there's no meetings, where we have an agenda of just all the things that are on our plate, almost like a brain dump. And we just have an unfocused focus session. And what that does is it almost allots thinking time where you're sitting in a room and you're able to just actually work through the challenges, the work, the details, because so many people don't have any time to do that. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.